WSICnews.com and click on the Community Calendar button. WSIC, proud to be part of your community.
Hello and welcome to Dollars and Cents presented by North Main Financial. I'm your host, Joshua Dobi. Thank you so much for tuning in with us here. 4 o'clock hour. If you're a 9 to 5er, you still got 53 minutes, 31 seconds from right now to get to that 5 o'clock line. We're so thankful, though, that you tuned into us here to get you to that point. And certainly if you're running shift work or other things, we're happy that you made this a part of your day. As you know, here on Dollars and Cents, we're talking on any number of subjects. We're often looking at things macro level, global level, if you will, looking at those things which are happening around us to understand what kind of impact points they may have for us here. But we also seek to break it down to an individual level. We're looking at those kinds of things that may be a part of your experience, perhaps with your family, colleagues, other folks as well, when we're looking at all things economic and financial. But you know, as a previous listener to Dollars and Cents, that nothing that we're talking about here is intended as a specific recommendation for you. Meaning that even though we're talking on specific strategies and we're going to be talking specific companies, I promise you, again, here today, we're going to be looking at some things company-wise and even insofar as strategic thought is concerned, maybe even looking at some things in a positive light, maybe some things in a not-so-positive light. Again, that nothing that we're talking about here is intended as a specific recommendation for you. We strongly, strongly recommend that you reach out to your tax advisor, to your financial advisor, or if you'd like to reach out to us at North Main Financial Group, love to hear from you, love to chat with you about your particular financial situation. Online, you can find us at northmainfinancial.com. That's north like the direction, Main like the street, financial.com. You get the contact page on there. Leave us an email address or a phone number. Let us know the most preferred and desirable ways for us to contact you, again, at northmainfinancial.com. You're also welcome to call the studio. You got something that's on your mind you'd like us to chat about here, perhaps we're talking about it, or if there's something that maybe is on your radar screen. We can't speak into your specific situation. We're not going to give recommendations over the air for the obvious reasons, but if you'd like for us to address a specific subject, love to hear from you. Call into the studio here at 844-STUDIO-4. That's 844-788-3464. One more time, 844-788-3464 here at the studio here at WSIC. Love to hear from you. Love to hear about what's on your mind and the kinds of things, again, that we might be able to bring to the fore and talk about that may be helpful to you. All right, we're going to get into to hot headlines here. And, you know, this has become really our opening salvo here on Dollars and Cents, primarily because we want to bring the things that dotting your headlines, you may be discussing, you may be thinking about, and certainly when you're looking at the most popular news programs that are out there, these are the kinds of things that we're seeing. And we want to make sure that they're in front of you there. And certainly, if they can be helpful to you in terms of what we're looking at, we want to be able to do that as well. First big one that's out there. We've seen this now for several months. You've heard us talk about this here on Dollars and Cents and looking at those things that are happening around us economically and trying to get an idea about how 2024 is going to look. 2023, in a lot of ways, very positive. Certainly, if you're looking at it from a stock performance standpoint, as measured by our most popular indices, they have the big three: the S&P 500 index, Dow Jones Industrial Average, Nasdaq Composite, all pretty strong across the board. Now, you also heard me say here on Dollars and Cents that yes, those indices were strong, but really what that was a function of a relatively small handful of companies that did very, very well, overshadowing what was much more modest, if even mediocre, and sometimes negative performance of the vast majority of the market. Very interesting. A lot like 2021 was in a lot of ways. 2022 was pretty miserable across the board, but 2021 was very positive from a stock index standpoint. But again, only a handful of companies, generally speaking, that did well relative to the overall markets. So very interesting to see that in 2023. So we're looking at 2024, looking at those kind of data points closely that have some concern for us, especially because coming out of a positive year, not that we want to look a gift horse in the proverbial mouth here, but we want to be mindful of the fact that if we have a very positive year in the markets, it is very rare that that's going to be followed by a very positive year. Doesn't mean we're going to be negative, doesn't mean it's going to crash out or anything like that, but it does mean that we want to be mindful of the fact that if we're running above the average for a certain amount of time, that for a certain amount of time, then also we need to run below the average in order to make the average. You're following me here. I know you are when we're watching this kind of stuff. Let's take a look at it. Commercial real estate, big on the radar screen, big as far as the things that we're watching as well. Well, the big data point that we see sitting out there for commercial real estate. So we're talking Class A office space mostly with what I'm talking about next. Over the course of the next 4 years, there is approximately, and this is a Wall Street Journal report, so you can take a look at the Wall Street Journal as well to reference it. Wall Street Journal report that's out there, and I've seen it from several other sources as well, that approximately $2.25 billion worth of Class A office space here in the U.S. is up or matures, the notes mature, the mortgages mature here over the next 4 years. In 2023 alone, we had about $500 million, so over $500 million worth of Class A office space where they had the notes mature. Now, without getting too granular on that, recognize that when we say that the notes mature, that doesn't mean necessarily that the buildings had to be sold or that the notes were paid off or anything like that. Actually, way over 90%, significantly more than 9 out of 10 instances, it is a refinancing scenario, meaning that they go from the old note to a new note based upon current interest rates. The reason why that's important, you may understand where I'm going here. The reason why that's important is for the overwhelming majority of those notes, you're moving from a space of low interest rates to higher interest rates, meaning higher costs of capital to maintain those notes. That's significant because you couple that with the data point that we had here last week on dollars and cents. When you look at that, we have approximately right now, we're in the neighborhood of approximately 20%, or 1 out of 5 office spaces right now that is vacant. And it's the highest number that we've had here in the last 3 decades. Now, is it geometrically higher than what it was a year ago? No, it's just 1% more than what it was a year ago. But it is the highest point that we've had here in the last 3 decades. So we couple that with the fact that we have a significant portion of office real estate where the folks are going to have to refinance, meaning the owners of those, whether it be a real estate investment trust, whether it be an individual owner, ownership groups, whether it be investment companies that own those real estates, several different entities, several different kinds of entities which can own those kinds of things. If they have to refinance, that's going to be a very big deal, meaning their cost of capital is going to go up, which means also that they're going to need to increase their rents in order to be able to cover that cost of capital. I mean, it seems fairly intuitive, right? Fairly linear mathematics there to take a look at that thing. But when you couple that, again, with the data point of last week, that says about 20% of our office space right now is vacant, and that there's an indication that there may be more sitting out there, meaning that as leases come due, that they may not be renewed by the tenants because of either a work from home kind of scenario or some kind of hybrid work scenario. It's important to keep that on your radar screen. Does that mean that there's offices are going to be a terrible investment? No, we're not saying that at all. But it is important to keep that on your radar screen because that's significantly different from where we have been here over the last several years. So you definitely want to keep that on your radar screen. Also, another data point, you know me and data points. I like to line them up. I like to stuff as many as we can into the timeline there to understand where things are. That we also are seeing delinquencies pop up. When I say delinquencies, I'm talking about folks who actually own those mortgages, the buying groups, the investment trusts, whether they are individual entities who may own those sorts of things. Delinquencies are popping up as well, moved up from 4% to 8% year over year. And again, not a reason to be concerned, but definitely the kinds of things when you line up the other data points with regards to, again, with regards to vacancies and other items. We're definitely watching commercial real estate. That's a big deal. It's a very big deal. It's a very large expense point for so many corporations. Well, folks, we're going to take a break here to hear from our sponsors. And before we go, I want to make sure that you hang with us here into the second quarter here on Dollars and Cents. Appreciate so much you guys hanging with us here on WSIC at the 4 o'clock hour. We're going to look forward to talk with you about what's happening in the markets. Stay tuned here on WSIC.
Dollars and Cents with your host, certified financial planner Joshua Dobi, continues straight ahead on 105.9, 100.7 WSIC.
Well, the clouds continue to thicken up, but not much rain on the way. Nothing more than a spotty shower, mainly while we're sleeping overnight. Temperatures drop down just above freezing in the overnight hours, and rain's out of here before sunrise tomorrow morning. For our Friday clearing and getting windy, high temperatures in the 40s, but crashing fast as another blast of Arctic air moves in for the weekend. Mornings in the teens, highs barely near freezing for Saturday. And that's your forecast from the WSIC Weather Center. I'm meteorologist Chase Myers.
Here is your WSIC community calendar. Having performed all over the world, written hit songs, and mentored artists, Rocky Lynn is making another stop here at home, playing at Kane Center for the Arts this Saturday. Listen each weekday morning for your chance to win tickets and meet and greet passes. And come hang out with us prior to the show. WSIC will be in front of Kane Center for the Arts from 6 to 7 p.m. Rocky Lynn this Saturday, kanearts.org. That's CAIN arts.org. Mooresville Parks and Recreation presents the Hitmen of Country, playing at the Charles Mack Citizen Center Friday, January 19th. Love country music? The Hitmen of Country have toured and recorded with some of the country's greatest artists, like Keith Urban, Trace Adkins, Travis Tritt, and Jason Aldean. For more information, go to visitmooresville.com. That's visitmooresville.com. Birkdale on Ice is still going on through January 28th. Time to lace up your skates and hit the ice. To make sure you can skate when you want, we recommend you making a reservation. For skate session info, including times and pricing, visit birkdalevillage.com. Want to attend the Greater Charlotte Home and Landscape Show? How about the Charlotte Home and Remodeling Show? Throughout the day, you have your chance to win tickets. Listen each day to Good Morning LKN, the Home Ad Show, the News Drive at 5, and the Scoreboard. Each show gives you your chance to win. The Greater Charlotte Home and Garden Show, February 23rd through the 25th. The Charlotte Home and Remodeling Show, January 26th through the 28th. Have an event you'd like to tell people about? Yard sales, estate sales, and everything in between? Visit WSICnews.com and click on events to submit your event today.
It's Dollars and Cents with certified financial planner Joshua Dobi on 105.9 100.7 WSIC.
Hello and welcome back to Dollars and Cents presented by North Main Financial. I'm your host, Joshua Dobi. Thank you for hanging with us into the second quarter of today's football reference. We're still in football season. I'm going to take it out to the bloody end. I don't care if our Panthers are in the playoffs or not, because we still have several weeks here of football. Now, producer Bill, your Ravens are still in it.
That they are.
I mean, and they look strong. I mean, I think by any legitimate, non-biased look at things, I mean, they got to be in there for going to the Super Bowl. I mean, they're certainly looking very strong.
Right. It does help to have your endorsement. What makes me a little nervous and a lot of pressure on those Ravens is I know one team who beat the Texans this year, and they were the Panthers. So the Ravens got to get it done.
So the Ravens got to be on their game.
They got to be on their game.
Because because the Panthers are
ipso facto, we
right.
would be. Yeah, I digress.
See, but that's good. You got to keep your head low. You never want to get too overconfident, right?
That's
with when you're looking at especially the playoffs. But all right. But I got to say, I mean, they got to be one of the top there for making it to the Super Bowl. So we're going to watch them. Make sure that you're watching it as well. I mean, we're getting into getting into the playoff end of things, and obviously our Panthers aren't in it. Steelers got knocked out last week as well. So all right, so we're going to pick up on the Ravens here for as long as they take us. But along those lines, some news out, and you're going to see how I'm going to tie in football and food, because we like to talk about both of those things here on Dollars and Cents. I promise you, it's financial. It definitely is, because the company I'm going to talk about next is publicly traded, and of course I'm going to tell you that this is not a recommendation to buy, sell, or hold Dave & Buster's. Right, so Dave & Buster's, one of those restaurants that you also have entertainment possibilities. I mean, skee ball and video games and other kinds of things to enjoy if you haven't been to one or are not familiar with what it is. But they, like so many other entertainment entities, have a challenge, and I know this from working the bar for paying my way through college, that the Monday to Thursday run relative to running a bar or running a restaurant, it's sometimes pretty challenging, right? So not as many folks sometimes coming into the bar or coming into the restaurant. So you're thinking about ways, you're offering up specials to be able to get folks in the door, and we're seeing some restaurants and entertainment entities that are having challenges getting more folks in the door. And not to say that necessarily they're suffering, but they're going back to some old tricks, or they're doing some things to be able to drive folks in the door. I'm mentioning Dave & Buster's, which, by the way, has one of the coolest stock tickers that's out there. If you take a look at them online, again, not a recommendation to buy, sell, or hold, but their stock ticker is PLAY, P-L-A-Y. Very cool. In my end of the world. I mean, I know it's a little bit crazy, but I do like those kinds of things. But Dave & Buster's is reintroducing. So they had this, they let it go. They're bringing it back in on Mondays and Tuesdays. They're bringing back in all you can eat fried chicken wings. Now, there are a certain number of things that I truly love in this life. One of them is my wife. The other is my two daughters. And the next one, I believe in line, is fried chicken wings. And I mean that as I'm serious as a heart attack. So I absolutely love fried chicken wings. And I was so happy to hear that, even though I am a long ways away from being able to have an impact on an all-you-can-eat fried chicken wing night. Now, producer Bill, you're probably very good at that because you are significantly younger than I am, so you probably have much more capability.
I can definitely step into this arena.
You know what? And I would just like to do it to say that I did it again
Right.
because I mean, a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, I mean, that would have been a reason for me to literally to put that on my calendar. Like it would have been,
Right.
go to class. This would have been in college. Go to class, do your homework, fried chicken night, and
I think I
all
just
you can eat
heard
wings.
station owner Justin just run out of the door.
I mean, it's out there Monday and Tuesdays at Dave & Buster's. So you can go there. You can eat as many chicken wings as you can possibly consume, and you can play some skee ball on the side. And for 50, 75, or 100,000 tickets, you can get a stuffed rabbit or something similar like that, right? I mean, isn't that? I mean, some things never change. I think. So good stuff. So it's kind of interesting though, just to see the kinds of things that I mean, the restaurant and hospitality business, and those of you who are involved with it, you know this brutal business. I think it's just very, very challenging, even on its best days. Like I said, I worked bar literally my entire time in college as a way to help pay tuition, and I mean, yeah, Friday and Saturday nights, great. I mean, it was wonderful, but boy, you had to hit it well on Friday and Saturday nights because those Monday to Thursday runs were a little bit tough. So interesting to see these entities that are trying to bring in more folks, trying to drive more business during those off days. I mean, I got to believe it's going to work. I mean, I don't know. Although, and I've heard this from a number of restaurant folks, chicken wings, raw chicken wings, very expensive now. I mean, it's not. I mean, we kind of joke about it. I mean, obviously, I'm showing my age here, but when I was growing up, I mean, having 10-cent chicken wings, or 20-cent chicken wings, that was a norm. That was out there. You could find those kinds of restaurants that were doing that. Bill, I mean, I don't see anything like that anymore. I mean, it's significantly more expensive.
No, I certainly have not seen that lately.
No.
And I remember when I was living in Atlanta, there was a chicken wing shortage, and I thought, oh man,
I mean, I'm willing to
that
go.
was a pandemic on its own.
I'm willing to go without a lot of things, but I may not make it through a sustained chicken wing shortage. But you're exactly right. More expensive now as well. Very interesting. All right, Dave and Buster. We could talk fried chicken wings all night here, but we're not going to do that. Let's move on. Other items on the hot headline end of things here. This is pretty big, and I say pretty big, yes, in terms of the size. When you're looking at about a $5-6 billion billion with a B kind of merger possibility, which has been shut down, but also with regards to the impact that it has on travel. And I'm not saying good or bad, right or wrong. I'm just saying that there is an impact. JetBlue and Spirit. So JetBlue and Spirit, the airline companies, you may have flown one or both of those at some point along the way, or you may be familiar with them in terms of understanding that they are among the airline carriers that are out there. They had announced a merger here. I want to say it's almost a year ago that they had announced it, and it's been blocked formally by a federal court judge, meaning it's been blocked. They are not allowed to move forward at this point with the merger. Now, there had been some indication that was going to be the case, meaning that this is not a complete surprise, and the reasoning behind it was, and this came from the Department of Justice about 4 or 5 months ago, as well, indicating that their perception, their look at it, said that this would be stifling to competition, meaning that it would continue to reduce the number of carriers, the number of airline carriers out there, and that this would stifle competition, create more opportunities for monopolistic pricing. And this is not for me to comment that it would or it wouldn't, really to make you aware of it, because this was out there. There's another one that's still sitting out there, Alaska Air, about 3 months ago, maybe at this point, 3-4 months ago. It was before the end of the year that they had announced that Alaska Air was going to be buying or made a bid attempt for Hawaiian Airlines. So somewhat smaller, both of those entities. I want to say the buy price was right around $1.5 billion for Hawaiian Air, but that had been out there as well. Now that one's still pending, meaning that one still has a possibility of going through. But this larger one with JetBlue and Spirit now, at least for right now, seems to be a little bit cooler. It's kind of interesting. When I say cooler, I don't mean cool in terms of like the cool stuff. I'm talking about like actually not going to happen. But when we look at that also, if you recall, whenever JetBlue and Spirit were beginning to think about this possibility, Frontier was in the mix as well as a merger possibility there. They were outbid, and now it's interesting now that this looks like it may be put on the proverbial ice deck, that I wonder if Frontier is going to be back in the mix of things. So what has been true in the airline industry for a number of years, and I find it interesting that the DOJ is stepping in now just as a sidebar and saying that this is going to occur pricing when I look at the much larger mergers which have occurred over the last number of years, whether you're looking at U.S. Air and America West and Northwest and American, or Northwest and United, excuse me, and a number of others. So, I mean, basically, we have three legacy carriers right now. We have American, we have United, and Delta, and everybody else is working with relatively small portions of the market. So I find it interesting because we really have consolidated the market in significant ways to this point. Now we're concerned about a couple of smaller carriers. Kind of interesting when you look at it on a relative basis. But that's pretty notable news that's sitting out there for the week. So we're definitely keeping that on our radar screen. Next big item here. In big item, we talk about food a lot. We talk about football a lot because those are very important things. So that's why we talk about them with some frequency here on Dollars and Cents. But I came across a news article and some description on the cruise industry. Now, Bill, I think we've talked about this, whether you're a cruise guy or not, meaning one who enjoys taking vacations on a cruise ship. And I mean, is that high on your radar screen? Not as high on your radar screen at this point?
I haven't done it.
Yeah.
So I am neutral to it right now. Could I see myself with no responsibilities, straw or one of those drinks with the umbrella
The
in
umbrellas
it?
in it? Yeah, absolutely.
That's my kind of life. Yeah.
I mean, why not? Especially
Right.
if you're in the middle of the Caribbean or some other warm water destination. I mean, what's not to like?
That and fried chicken wings, you paint a pretty picture.
I mean, I might be in Nirvana at that point. But that being said, so the reason why I'm bringing this up, in addition to the fact that we love fried chicken wings, is the fact that Royal Caribbean has come out with a new ship called Icon of the Seas. You probably have seen, even I've seen it on some television commercials that have been running during sport events. That they've come out with the largest one out there, 7,000 people, 7,000 people on a ship. I mean, that's not counting the staff. I mean, that's amazing. I mean, 7,000. It's hard for me to believe. Largest ship now that's out there. I believe its maiden voyage is coming up the next month. I want to say it's relatively quick that it's coming up. So anyhow, I'm saying all of that to say that there was a side article written about this as well with regards to the fact that there is an increased desire among some folks to ride older ships or to book on older ships because the prices are better. A very interesting kind of side note. I hadn't really thought about that. Yes, there is huge demand for these new ships. It's the new flashy, sparkly thing that folks desire. But also there is a relatively high amount of demand for older ships. I shouldn't say that. There is increasing demand for older ships because the prices are better, meaning that the cruises that they offer on a relative basis are less expensive than these new flashy ships. I thought that was kind of interesting. And I thought, what an opportunity as well. So if you're out there, if you're a cruise person and you don't mind being on an older ship, supposedly, as I was reading this report, they're not as crowded. The service is even better because there are not as many people on the ship. Kind of interesting. Take a look at it if you're a cruise person. Appreciate you hanging with us here on Dollars and Cents, presented by WSIC. Stay with us. Back soon.
We'll have more of Dollars and Cents with certified financial planner Joshua Dobi following these brief messages on 105.9 100.7 WSIC.
Well, the clouds continue to thicken up, but not much rain on the way. Nothing more than a spotty shower, mainly while we're sleeping overnight. Temperatures drop down just above freezing in the overnight hours, and rain's out of here before sunrise tomorrow morning. For our Friday clearing and getting windy, high temperatures in the 40s, but crashing fast as another blast of Arctic air moves in for the weekend. Mornings in the teens, highs barely near freezing for Saturday. And that's your forecast from the WSIC Weather Center. I'm meteorologist Chase Myers.
Thinking of a truck? Think Sierra, a GMC Sierra, and Black Automotive is where you find it. No matter where you're heading or what task you're tackling, there's a premium capable Sierra 1500 that's perfect for you. Now you can take $7,000 off the Sierra 1500 crew cab models with a 5.3 motor, or you can take 1.9% interest for 36 months. Take the 2023 GMC Terrain for a test drive and just see what you're missing. It's a wonderful SUV, and you'll love this one. Now take $4,000 off the 2023 GMC Terrain or your choice of 1.9% interest for 36 months. Choose the 2023 Canyon Elevation, $2,000 off. And if a pre-owned is more in your budget, see the mile-long inventory of trucks and cars. See Black Automotive, the Greater Car Trader, home of Buick, GMC, Dodge, Jeep, Dodge Ram, and so much more. Iredell County's most preferred dealer, Black Automotive, Salisbury Road, Statesville, just off I-77.
Join your friends from Oswald Baptist Church in Troutman, Sunday mornings at 8:30 on WSIC. Be informed and inspired with teachings from the Word of God by Pastor Wesley Morris. Sunday mornings at 8:30 on WSIC.
Prioritizing your health is one of the best ways to take care of yourself. From routine visits to the joys of pregnancy to the illnesses that stop you in your tracks, Iredell Health System will be by your side. Learn more at iredellhealth.org.
If you're looking for the most epic place on earth, let's start at the base of a massive waterfall. Then trek through the thick jungle. Then climb to the peak of a snowy mountaintop. Then once you get there, keep going. Because with intelligent 4x4 and 7 drive modes and a Nissan Pathfinder, the search is the real adventure.
Available feature. Intelligent 4x4 cannot prevent collisions or provide enhanced traction in all conditions. Always monitor traffic and weather conditions.
Jim Gaffigan here with some more Straight Talk. Let's take a moment to appreciate our sweet children, loving grandparents, and eternal soulmates. Now let's use them to save money on wireless. Because with the Straight Talk Silver Plan, you get 4 lines for just $25 a month with unlimited data and no contracts. So add those human pawns, loved ones, and save money. Thanks, kids. They're finally worth it. Straight Talk Wireless, available at Walmart.
Get 4 lines on Silver Unlimited for $25 per line per month, plus taxes and fees. For data management practices and additional terms, visit straighttalk.com.
Making your money make sense. Dollars and Cents with CFP Joshua Dobi on 105.9 100.7 WSIC.
Hello and welcome back to Dollars and Cents presented by North Main Financial. I'm your host, Joshua Dobi. Thank you so much for hanging with us in the second half of today's show. Appreciate you. You're on the home stretch at this point. If you're a 9-to-5er relative to your workday, 26 minutes and 21 seconds until you hit the finish line here. Stay with us. We'll get to the sprint here before too long as we get into the later part of the show, but I appreciate you spending the time with us here on Dollars and Cents presented by North Main Financial. All right, this is the segment we do right after the halfway point in the show where we talk about what to know. Those kinds of things that we feel are important for you to know, and they're generalized concepts and maybe things that you know already or maybe things that are already on your radar screen, but that we hear with some frequency or we're dealing with them with some frequency with our clients. So we call it what to know, or those kinds of things that you may want to keep in mind if this particular item is relevant to you. Now, we are very intentional about looking at several different kinds of things. So we may be looking at things that may be more relevant to younger families. We may be looking at things that are relevant to individuals. We may be relevant to folks going through divorce or have an inheritance. All kinds of things we're looking at. We do that very intentionally. Today is going to be for folks who are in the college experience. And when I say the college experience, it may be you who's going through the college experience, or it may be that you are the parent of one who is going through the college experience. And we're going to be touching on today and what to know about the FAFSA form. Now, FAFSA is an acronym, so it's not actually called the FAFSA form, but it's FAFSA, the federal application for, the free application for federal student aid. Free application for federal student aid. Very common, very widely used form when folks are getting ready to go to college to declare what assets they have, what income streams that they have, as there is a determination made by a particular college or a university for the amount of financial assistance that they will or will not be awarded or afforded. So the reason why I'm bringing it up is because it is so relevant to folks who are in the college experience. But then secondly, as we're thinking about the free application for federal student aid and completing it and why it's important and relevant for you to know about it, is because there have been a number of changes changes which have occurred to that FAFSA form here for this year. And that has included, unfortunately, in that process. And I'm chuckling not because it's funny, but because it's pretty amazing that this process couldn't be ironed up before it's actually needed. Because of the changes that have been made that were supposed to make it more efficient, irony here coming next, that it actually has delayed a significant portion of the process, meaning the form wasn't even available until the first of this month, when it usually is available and ready to go during the fall season. So it wasn't even available until after the new year. And now, because of how the application process goes, the submission to the Department of Education and back to the college or university where you would like that to go, we're probably going to be into March before that process actually is finished. And I say that to say that, unfortunately, for a lot of folks, especially if you are an early decision person or one who has requested to be a part of the early decision process for your particular college or university, you may have a word back from your college or university before you have an understanding about what your student aid package may be. Now, some colleges and universities have worked around that and basically drafted their own FAFSA form to be able to do that in advance, but not everyone. I've only heard about that in a couple of instances where specific colleges and universities have kind of done their own spreadsheet, if you will, to be able to determine that and then to make their student aid proposal in addition to acceptance letters that are going out as well. But I say that to say that if you're experiencing that kind of frustration, you're not alone. We are talking with folks frequently who are frustrated by that process, a delay in terms of determining what the actual student aid package is, and that has a huge impact on the kinds of decisions that you make. I was talking with a client earlier this week as he was looking at for his daughter, looking at a number of different universities all up and down the Atlantic coast. I mean, everything from the University of South Florida to William and Mary in Williamsburg, Virginia, to Duquesne University in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and looking at all of those and struggling to understand how they were going to make a good choice quickly enough, because they didn't really have an indication at this point about what the student loan, student aid package would be at this point. So just wanted to share that with you because, again, so relevant to so many of you who are in the college experience. If you have gone through it, you know what I'm describing. If it's not the first time going through it, you know what I'm describing. But what goes on a FAFSA, or what is it, or why is it important? Well, on the FAFSA form, like I said at the front end of this segment of What to Know, the FAFSA form is where you indicate the income streams and assets for the student who is applying for that aid, and then also for that student's parents, meaning that there is also a calculation that is done. It's a different calculation, but it's a calculation that is done relative to the student's parents' assets as well. And that's important. That's important for you to know because there are some assets which are included, and there are other assets which are not included in that calculation, meaning that assets that are owned by the student, very much included, actually up to and including 100% of the assets that the student owns. But for the parents, depending upon what that asset is, it could be anywhere from 5 to 35% of that asset is included in the calculation. And then with regards to retirement accounts, those are not included. Life insurance also not included, or life insurance cash values not included in that calculation. So it's very important for you to be aware of that, especially if you are looking at it strategically, meaning where to place certain assets or where to move certain assets so that you can qualify for more or for as much student aid as you may be eligible to receive. Very, very important to understand that and to keep that in mind, because sometimes, whether it's grandparents or parents, they want to put assets into the child's name, and that may or may not be the right thing to do. Everybody's situation is unique. I'm not making recommendations about what to do or what not to do. Merely relaying to you here about how that calculation goes together so that you're aware. Because it may be the kind of thing that would be helpful to re-register certain assets, or it may be helpful to be able to establish certain kinds of accounts. So that, one of the things that we do with some regularity at North Main Financial is we will establish college savings accounts in the names of grandparents. And the reason why we do that is because grandparents' assets are not included on a FAFSA form, but you can make the beneficiary the student. So that's one of the strategies that we utilize for some folks for whom that makes sense. Again, it may or may not make sense in your particular situation, but it's the kind of thing to keep in mind. because it is the FAFSA form and the completion of the FAFSA form and the relay of either the award of student aid or being told that there is no student aid because you don't qualify for student aid. That process is part and parcel to most college student experiences. Meaning it's not true for everybody, but for most folks, that is part of their college student experience. So we're dealing with it all the time. I mean, we're dealing with it literally from the time that with clients when their children are born, literally, and saving for college if that's their desire, if that's part of their plan, if that's something that they want to do, up to and including the time of postgraduate work and beyond. So it's very much a part of the planning process and a very important part of the planning process because of how big the numbers are. I mean, I don't have to tell you right now, if you're looking at, especially if you're looking at private school tuition. Now, public school tuition, especially for in-state folks, those numbers tend to be significantly lower in terms of room board tuition kinds of numbers. But if you're looking at private school experience in many instances, it's very common for us anymore to see private school room board tuition numbers to be north of 50, meaning greater than $50,000 a year. And in some instances, we see $60,000 and $70,000 a year. So we're talking some very large numbers. So if you're planning for that, if you're trying to save for that, you need to save a tremendous amount of money to be able to do that. And then I don't have to tell you, if you have more than one child or you're saving for more than one child, you just do 2x or 3x or 4x on top of that. So the numbers can get exponential even very quickly in terms of what's necessary for that. Now, there are a lot of different ways to come at that. There are a lot of different ways to address the college expense experience. But it's important to be aware, you probably are, that those numbers can be very, very large. So very important to keep in mind. It's very important that if you do desire to save for your child's college expenses in whatever way, shape, or form, if you want to cover all of them, part of them, some of them, that you do so as early as possible. And that's just a function of time, meaning that the longer that you have, the greater amount of time that you have for those assets to accumulate. That's very, very important from a planning standpoint to keep in mind. If you haven't gone that route, and then you desire a little bit later on to do it, or if you're maybe even closer to the college experience, you may need to look more at loan possibilities, or grant possibilities, or scholarship possibilities. All of those can work as well. They're just different from saving for it privately or on your own. So very, very important to keep that kind of thing in mind. It's not easy. I'll tell you just anecdotally here on the side, it's one of the more challenging things, especially with families that have multiple children for which they want to save. It's hard. The numbers are big. I mean, I had this conversation here a little bit earlier this week as well, where parents had attended a private college in New York, and they desired for their two children. They desire for their two children to attend that college, that same private college in New York, and they wanted to do planning relative to the future projected expense of that private college whenever their first child was ready to go to college. I mean, the numbers are huge. I mean, you're talking about $500,000 that just based upon current inflation rates. And when I say inflation rates, I mean college cost inflation rates, $500,000 each. So you're talking about two children, you're talking about $1 million. You're talking about a huge number. Now, is that what it's going to be at that time? Is that the only way that you can go to that college? No, of course not. But they desired to cover all of the expenses going to that same college, and wanted to make that a possibility for both children in this instance. So big numbers. And so it's not for me to say whether it's right or wrong, good or bad. It's just to know that those are big numbers. And if you're wanting to save for that kind of thing, important that you save correctly. And important that you are aware as much as you can be about what goes on the FAFSA form when you're talking about the free application for federal student aid, to make sure that you note things appropriately and that you qualify for as much as you can when you're looking at those kinds of things. So very, very important to do that. And but don't be overwhelmed. That's what I tell folks all the time. Don't be overwhelmed by the cost. There are a lot of different ways to come at it, a lot of different programs that are out there. There may be scholarships for which you don't even know that you qualify. We strongly encourage folks, use the student aid office, use other organizational kinds of things. There are constantly folks who are giving away money for the college experience. Well, friends, I appreciate so much you hanging with us here on Dollars and Cents, presented by North Main Financial. We're wrapping up here, going to the fourth quarter. Stay with us.
More of Dollars and Cents with certified financial planner Joshua Dobi is coming up on 105.9 100.7 WSIC.
Well, the clouds continue to thicken up, but not much rain on the way. Nothing more than a spotty shower, mainly while we're sleeping overnight. Temperatures drop down just above freezing in the overnight hours, and rain's out of here before sunrise tomorrow morning. For our Friday clearing and getting windy, high temperatures in the 40s, but crashing fast as our Another blast of Arctic air moves in for the weekend. Mornings in the teens, highs barely near freezing for Saturday. And that's your forecast from the WSIC Weather Center. I'm meteorologist Chase Myers.
Here is your WSIC community calendar. Having performed all over the world, written hit songs, and mentored artists, Rocky Lynn is making another stop here at home, playing at Kane Center for the Arts this Saturday. Listen each weekday morning for your chance to win tickets and meet and greet passes. And come hang out with us prior to the show. WSIC will be in front of Kane Center for the Arts from 6 to 7 p.m. Rocky Lynn this Saturday, kanearts.org. That's CAIN arts.org. Mooresville Parks and Recreation presents the Hitmen of Country, playing at the Charles Mack Citizen Center Friday, January 19th. Love country music? The Hitmen of Country have toured and recorded with some of the country's greatest artists, like Keith Urban, Trace Adkins, Travis Tritt, and Jason Aldean. For more information, go to visitmooresville.com. That's visitmooresville.com. Birkdale on Ice is still going on through January 28th. Time to lace up your skates and hit the ice. To make sure you can skate when you want, we recommend you making a reservation. For skate session info, including times and pricing, visit birkdalevillage.com. Want to attend the Greater Charlotte Home and Landscape Show? How about the Charlotte Home and Remodeling Show? Throughout the day, you have your chance to win tickets. Listen each day to Good Morning LKN, the Home Ad Show, the News Drive at 5, and the Scoreboard. Each show gives you your chance to win. The Greater Charlotte Home and Garden Show, February 23rd through the 25th. The Charlotte Home and Remodeling Show, January 26th through the 28th. Have an event you'd like to tell people about? Yard sales, estate sales, and everything in between? Visit WSICnews.com and click on events to submit your event today.
Call now to speak with certified financial planner Joshua Dobi at 844-STUDIO-4. It's dollars and cents on 105.9, 100.7 WSIC.
Hello and welcome back to Dollars and Cents, presented by North Main Financial. I'm your host, Joshua Dobi. Thank you so much for hanging with us in the fourth quarter football reference. Thank you for staying with us here. You're almost at the end. Again, if you're a 9 to 5er, you got 11 minutes and 53 seconds left. You're almost there. Promise you, it's close. You just listen to the sound of my voice, and I'm gonna get you to the finish line, or within about 10 seconds of it, actually. But pretty close here to the end. But I appreciate so much you spending the time with us here on Dollars and Cents as we're talking about all things economic and financial. If you'd like to give us a call in the studio, perhaps you'd like to talk about something in particular relative to what you've seen on the headlines. Can't talk to your specific financial situation for the obvious reasons. Can't make recommendations over the air. My compliance folks will get really excited, and not in a good way if I start doing that. But happy to hear about what's on your mind, those kinds of topics you may be seeing on your headlines. 844-STUDIO-4. That's 844-788-3464. 844-788-3464 here in the studio. Happy to hear from you. Happy to make sure that that the topic that you have in mind, we make sure that we talk about here. All right, fourth quarter, we're talking usually here about the markets, and I know you hang around for this, and you want to hear what we're seeing in the markets, the kinds of things that not only about where we are, but where we're going. And it's been a very interesting start to the year. And I don't want to say unexpected or expected. I think that would be a little disingenuous. I tend to look at things in a very conservative fashion in terms of expectations. But I would say it's been pretty much up and down here for the first couple of weeks of the year. We've only had a couple of weeks at this point, so not a whole lot of data points to be able to line up and to feel confident about saying where the year is going. But certainly interesting to see. And it was interesting, especially to see that we came out a little bit weak on things that had done well last year, specifically big technology companies. And boy, we did a pivot and came right around and saw a lot of strong performance from some of those big technology companies here over the last several days, to the extent that those are our leaders here over the first couple of weeks. So when we're looking at that kind of thing, when we're looking at performance-wise, where things are right now, the folks say, well, it's feels like last year. Well, yeah, it's a little early. We're barely through the mid part of January at this point, so I don't want to say where things are going to end up. I mean, there are some very good positive indicators. For example, I was looking at some retail sales figures, which are starting now to come out from the Christmas shopping season, the Christmas retail season. Now, folks, I got to raise my hand quickly and say that I did not expect to see the strength of consumer spending that we saw here, that we saw here at the end of last year for the Christmas retail season. And so when I'm looking at that, that's an indication of some significant strength from the consumer. 5.6% is what I saw, meaning year over year increase in terms of retail spending, Christmas spending, 5.6% increase year over year. That's significant, folks. I mean, it doesn't sound like a huge number, but when you look at that on a relative basis, I mean, we're talking about a very significant move in 1 year. And so when I'm looking at that and I'm trying to understand where the consumer is, and frankly, at some level, I'm wondering how the consumer is continuing to spend at this level because we've got some headwinds too. So that's on the positive side. Headwinds wise, I mean, rents continue to be very, very strong. And it's still very significantly more expensive to go to the grocery store, significantly more expensive to go into a restaurant, and those kinds of things. So when we're looking at those kinds of experiences, travel more expensive. Golly, have you bought a plane ticket recently? I mean, it's expensive. And you don't have to be going to some fancy destination. I mean, I travel a lot up and down the East Coast to some not very glamorous locations, and boy, is it expensive. It really is. So those kinds of things. When I'm looking at that, looking at how the consumer is spending, I'm trying to put that together. Like, how are they doing it? And it may be that we start to see a little bit of a slowdown this year, meaning in terms of the intensity of growth of the consumer spending. And that's big because you hear me say ad nauseum here on Dollars and Cents. The consumer is between 2/3 and 3/4 of our economy, meaning how the consumer spends, generally speaking, is how our economy moves. So I'm very sensitive to it. I watch it very closely, and I want to make sure that we understand in the best ways that we can about where the consumer is in terms of that spend. But coming back to the markets then, so looking at it again, how we ended the year on a very strong note, unexpectedly, at least I'll raise my hand and say for me, unexpectedly, in terms of how strong November and December were from a market performance standpoint. And I would say, by and large, from my look at things, by and large, the reason for that was there was some significant expectation. I'll even call it assumptions being made by the market about when the Federal Reserve is going to start decreasing rates or cutting the overnight lending rate. And I say that to say that because there were some indications, so they overstepped a little bit, right? So we had the Federal Reserve come out, after the last meeting of the year, and there were a couple of Federal Reserve governors who sit on the board who probably played their hand a little bit in talking about the number of rate cuts that were going to be happening in this year, 2024. That was presumptuous. I mean, it wasn't a wise move, in my opinion. It got the market a little bit ahead of itself, frankly, in a positive way, because the market wants those rates to go down. Cost of capital goes down. It's better for from the bottom line or the balance sheet for many companies. So the market tends to like that overall. So when that kind of announcement was made, you saw a lot of backpedaling. You saw a lot of, well, we're not sure yet, which is the right thing to say. We don't know yet. We're still getting into the first half of the first month of the year, and we don't know yet where things are going to land. But when we're looking at that and trying to understand what the Federal Reserve is going to be doing, I think we still have some ways to go. I mean, there are a number of indicators that they watch. Unemployment still incredibly low right now. I mean, sub 4% or under 4%, as measured by our most popular measures from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. I mean, it's too early to tell if companies are going to make any significant moves. Now, there was an announcement by Google. Parent is Alphabet now. There was an announcement by them that they're going to be paring back some of their workforce, a notable amount in terms of numbers, not a notable amount in terms of percentages. So that's important. That's one company, right? It's not an indication of the economy overall, but Alphabet is a very large company and certainly employs a lot of people. So it does have an impact, but probably not measurable beyond the folks who are at Alphabet or Google at this point. So when we're looking at that and then I'm trying to understand what that means then for the Federal Reserve as we go through the balance of the year, we would have to see a notable number of additional data points before I believe, and this is my opinion now, before I believe that the Federal Reserve is going to start cutting rates. That means, from where I sit, we are at least in the third quarter of this year, perhaps fourth quarter, perhaps not this year at all. And I know all the folks on the buy side in the equity markets get real excited whenever I say those kinds of things. First of all, it's my opinion, right? So I'm looking at the proverbial tea leaves just like everybody else is. There's no way to know in advance of that kind of thing with any kind of certainty. But when I'm looking at it and I'm trying to understand about just historically speaking, we first got to figure out what all of these rate increases are going to mean. That takes easily 6 to 9 months beyond the last rate increase. And then after that happens, do we need to cut rates? Is it appropriate for us to cut rates? I know the equity market's like that. I understand why. Okay, again, lower cost of capital. It's more advantageous for folks to borrow, meaning because of a lower capital cost to borrow those funds. I mean, that's basically what we experienced over the last 15 years. And if you say, well, I didn't experience it, if you have a mortgage, you definitely experienced it. If you had a car loan, you definitely experienced it. If you have any other lines of credit, credit cards, the whole 9 yards, you definitely experienced it because those rates were, I'll call it, unnaturally low for a very extended period of time, meaning relative to the normal cycles of those kinds of things. So when we're looking at it and trying to understand then what that means for 2024, we're cautious. I continue to be cautious, and you're going to say, well, you're always cautious. Yeah, you're probably right. You're probably right. I think that's my business, right? I got to be cautious. Never get too high on the high or too low on the lows. I think that's a very big deal whenever we're looking at these kinds of things. But it's also important as we're looking at 2024 to understand from a technical standpoint how the market moves. And I say that not to make any unnatural predictions about where things are going to go, but we're coming out of a very robust 2023, at least insofar as measured by the most popular stock indexes. So looking back over the last 90 years of market history or so, it is very unusual, not impossible, and not unprecedented, but very unusual that the market would follow that up with a similar style year of performance. That's what's very important to keep in mind. There's even a theory out there, you may have heard it, called the dogs of the Dow theory. Dog, like literally the dog, the pet, but it's really meant to be more of an indication about underperformance. And the dogs of the Dow theory essentially says this: the Dow Jones Industrial Average, 30 stocks that are make up that average, all price weighted, meaning those that have higher stock prices are going to have a higher influence over the average itself. But the dogs of the Dow theory essentially says take the bottom 3, 5, 8 stocks from the previous year, buy those. Those have the quote best possibility for success in the following year. Now, there's some times where that works, other times where it doesn't work, so it's certainly not a scientific end of things. But the idea behind it is on a technical basis that, generally speaking, sometimes those things which weren't in favor last year have a higher probability, generally, sometimes, have a higher probability of doing well the following year. And certainly if you hold on to them for a couple of years. It's also a blend of the idea of buy low. And that meaning buy low, meaning buy at a lower price. So if you have something that's a very good company that didn't do as well the previous year, it may be a time to consider looking at it for some folks. Not for everybody. Everybody's situation is unique and different. But if it underperformed, that may be a reason to take a look at it. On the other hand, and we have this conversation all the time, up to and including right before I hopped on the air here, that if you have something that has performed way above average or way above expectation, it is not unusual for that to come back to earth for a little while. It just has to, right? Nothing goes straight up forever. By the way, nothing goes straight down forever. But we act like it all the time. It is an amazing phenomenon, 28 years of doing this business, and the same thing happens every single time in terms of groupthink. It's a very interesting phenomenon. We think in straight lines. We really do. When it comes to the markets, we think in straight lines. If certain things are going up, we want to buy into it. We, the buying public, wants to buy into it because we believe it's going to continue to go straight up. And when things are going down, we the buying public, can believe that it's going to go straight down until it hits zero. It's amazing. And it's the amazing part is the repetition of the phenomenon. It really is something. But anyhow, so don't get caught up in that. Make sure that you're buying or selling for the right reasons. All right, folks, we're rapidly approaching the end of this week's version of Dollars and Cents presented by North Main Financial. Let's do a lightning fast recap talking about the important stuff first. We were talking fried chicken wings at Dave & Buster's. All you can eat back on Mondays and Tuesdays. What does that have to do with finances? It does. Dave & Buster's, publicly traded company, one of the best ticker symbols out there, PLAY. Very cool when you're looking at those kinds of things. But also, more seriously, commercial real estate, we're watching that. Vacancies going up, delinquencies going up, lots of loans that are going to need to be refinanced. We're going to see what that's going to mean for the overall commercial market. And then when we're looking at the markets for 2024, be cautious, be savvy, make decisions for the right reasons. Thank you so much, folks, for hanging with us on Dollars and Cents here on WSIC.
The new 105.9, 100.7 WSIC, Statesville, W290DK, Mooresville, Lake Norman.